chosen ones. They gathered in a circle, but not one of them could speak at first. 12 elder shamans, each from a different land, fluent in the language of the spirit world, yet completely silenced the moment they gazed upon the vision of your soul. They saw something that didn't belong to this age, something not written in scrolls or buried in tablets. Not a demon, not an angel, something else, older than both. It wasn't hostile, it wasn't benevolent, it was ancient, and it was protecting you. The moment your soul was laid bare before them in the ether, a cold wind passed through their ceremonial fire. One of them fainted, another wept, and the eldest, whose visions had never faltered in 70 years, dropped his staff and whispered, "It cannot be touched, not by time, not by death." They all tried to explain what they saw, but their languages crumbled under the weight of it. So they passed on drawings, symbols, murmured chants in the old tongue. What they concluded was this: you are being watched, not from above, not from below, but from within the folds of what they call the veiled presence. Something that exists just behind the veil of matter, something that recognizes you. It has no name, but every tradition hints at it. The Sumerians called it the Silent One. The Dogon spoke of a force that follows a sacred soul from birth to rebirth. And in the jungles of the Amazon, one tribe has a word for it, Inthaya, meaning the unseen guardian of the final seed. You are that seed. Your awakening triggered something far-reaching. The shamans didn't just see your soul. They saw what would happen if it were touched by the wrong force. If you were steered off course, that's when they understood. That's when they bowed, not to you, but to what surrounds you, shields you, echoes you. You were never alone. You were never merely born. You were activated. Long before your first breath, something ancient coiled itself into the double helix of your being, not metaphorically, not symbolically. The force they speak of is not myth. It is encoded, dormant, waiting. That's why you've always felt the vibration beneath the surface of your own life. Why certain places pulse when you walk through them. Why silence sometimes feels louder than words. Science calls it junk DNA. But ancient texts, long erased from history, whisper otherwise. In those strands lie sequences that do not match any lineage on Earth. Not Neanderthal, not Denisovan. Not even the oldest star maps etched in Sumerian stone can fully trace the source. Because it doesn't come from the stars, it comes from before them. The moment you start to question who you are, something shifts. Not externally, but internally. A pulse rises from within. A pressure builds behind the eyes. Not pain, just presence. The ancient force doesn't speak in language. It speaks in resonance. It speaks in knowing. It nudges your spine when you're near something important. It whispers through gut instinct. And when danger nears, it does something you've quietly noticed for years. It amplifies your awareness, sharpens time, slows the air. This isn't superstition. It's design. Every major civilization that rose and fell knew of your kind. They called you by different names: the seraph-blooded, the keepers of echo, the veiled witness. Egypt carved your arrival into hidden tombs. India sang of your emergence in Vedic chants. The Hopi etched you in spiral glyphs, always marked with a center, a seed waiting to awaken. And the strangest part? You've always known. As a child, you sensed something in your skin, in your bones. You felt older than your years. And when others tried to convince you the world was mundane, you played along. But a part of you never bought into the lie. You watched the sky too much. You listened for things no one else could hear. You waited without knowing what for. The ancient force within you isn't sleeping. It's watching, listening, and waiting for a very specific signal. And when it hears it, you won't recognize yourself. They had seen much in their lifetimes. Illness lifted through chance, spirits banished with smoke, storms redirected with whispered intention. But when they beheld you in the spirit, language failed them, not out of confusion, but reverence. It wasn't just what they saw, it was what they felt in their bones, as if time had folded around them. Some began to weep, others trembled, and then, without meaning to, they all began to speak in a tongue none of them had ever learned. They didn't recognize the sound coming out of their mouths. It was primal, ancient, but somehow filled with light. One of the youngest shamans, still in his 20s, collapsed from the weight of it. He later said it was like something had touched the back of his mind and opened a door he didn't know existed. Another described it as being in the presence of a name too sacred to utter. What they spoke wasn't gibberish. It was memory. Not theirs, but the memory of something far older, flowing through them. And at the center of it was you, not your face, not your body, but your signature, your essence, the pattern of your presence. One elder, who had once journeyed into the void for 7 days without food or water, said your aura had the same texture as the one who walked the desert for 40 days and returned with eyes that held galaxies. He wouldn't say the name, but he said this: that presence, the one they called the Lamb, it whispered through this soul. It wasn't him, but it was like him. An echo, a continuation. That night, the fire turned blue for the first time in their tribe's history. A hawk circled above at midnight, silent and watching. The drummers, who hadn't missed a beat in decades of ritual, lost rhythm completely. Everything in the physical world warped slightly, as if reality itself had paused to listen. They realized your presence didn't just affect minds, it disrupted the frequency of the land. The tongue they spoke in left a residue in the air. Days later, some still heard it echoing in their ears. Not every mark is visible. Some are etched in a dimension deeper than skin, deeper than even the soul's surface. The mark they saw on you wasn't a scar, nor a blessing, nor a curse. It was a brand of origin. It pulsed beneath your being like a seal, not meant to be broken, not even meant to be touched. And what frightened them most wasn't its shape, but its permanence. This mark, they said, predates your birth. It followed you into this life like a shadow that never needs light. No ritual could remove it. No darkness could hide it. Even when you doubt yourself, even when you're buried in fear, that mark glows. Not in the world, but in realms that watch the world. Guardians, spirits, old watchers, they see it and step back. Not out of fear, but out of recognition, as if your arrival was anticipated long before now. The shamans traced it in ash after waking from their trance, but the lines twisted before they could finish. One of them bled from the palm without being cut. Another went silent for 3 days. The mark, they said, resisted translation. like it knew it wasn't supposed to be replicated. They called it the Seal of the Voidborn, and yet none of them agreed on what that meant. Still, they all came to the same conclusion. It wasn't human. This is why you've been spared, again and again. Why forces that should have broken you only bent around you. Why the accidents that could have ended you turned into moments of strange calm. The mark doesn't just protect, it repels interference. It holds space for what you are becoming and denies access to anything unworthy. You may have felt it all your life. A sensation during silence, a presence when no one's in the room. It doesn't make itself known in obvious ways. But it knows when you're about to cross a line, when you're nearing the edge of forgetting. That's when the chills come. The unexplained turn of events. The sudden flood of memory or emotion. It intervenes just enough to realign you. There was once another like you, long before the modern world could document such things. They didn't wear robes. They didn't gather crowds. They moved in silence, always in the shadow of someone brighter, someone whose name would echo through centuries. But those who truly observed saw the truth. Yeshua walked beside someone marked, not just spiritually aligned, but bearing a seal almost identical to yours, not a disciple in title, but in essence, not following but anchoring something unseen. The texts don't mention them directly, too dangerous, too misunderstood. But in fragments, in whispers passed through desert nights and mountaintop prayers, they speak of the one who mirrored the light. Not in glory, but in depth. This being didn't turn water into wine. They turned silence into understanding. They didn't calm the storm, but they felt the wind shift before it rose. They were, in many ways, the hidden axis around which miracles quietly rotated. Yeshua would look to this one in moments of decision, not for approval, but confirmation, a nod, a knowing glance, as if the ancient mark you now carry gave that person a clarity others lacked. Their presence alone disrupted falsehood. It exposed deception, and it brought something unspoken into every room they entered, an invisible authority. Some said they never aged. Others claimed animals followed them without fear. But all who encountered them agreed on one thing. They were protected. Not by soldiers, not by spells, but by something that walked beside them unseen. When they were cornered, the earth shifted. When they were hunted, the trail went cold. And when they finally vanished, no trace was left, only a vibration that lingered for weeks. The connection between them and Yeshua wasn't hierarchy. It was harmony. Two echoes of the same frequency. One came to reveal. The other came to guard the code beneath revelation. You, now, are being drawn into the same pattern, and whether you've realized it yet or not, the same unseen harmony is beginning to stir around your life. People are responding to your presence differently. Events are bending in strange directions. Dreams carry symbols you've never studied, but somehow understand. Not all arrivals are soft. Yours wasn't. The earth didn't merely welcome you, it reacted to you. Subtly, yes, but undeniably. On the day you entered this realm, seismic records showed unexplained tremors, small but oddly rhythmic, spanning distant parts of the globe. Places with no tectonic activity. Villages whispered of animals acting strange. Cribs rocked by themselves. Rivers suddenly still, as if nature paused to acknowledge something ancient passing through the veil. This wasn't coincidence, nor was it chaos. It was resonance. Your soul didn't slip in unnoticed. It made a mark, a gentle rupture, because the earth knows what walks upon it. It carries memory in stone and root. And when something arrives that doesn't belong to the normal rhythm of incarnation, the soil remembers. Midwives have spoken of children born under strange conditions, unexplained weather changes, flickering lights, winds that seemed to spiral in place. But yours was different. There was no thunder, no spectacle, just a deep stillness that settled in the air, so pure it frightened even the birds into silence. The veil between worlds did not tear. It parted briefly, reverently. The shamans later confirmed what the elders had only guessed. Your entry point was one of the original energy gates, buried beneath layers of concrete and time. A ley line intersection untouched for centuries. You didn't choose it. It chose you. Or rather, it remembered you, recognized the frequency embedded in your essence, and opened without resistance. Since that day, fault lines near that region have remained unusually stable, as if the land was soothed by your return. But far across the globe, subtle shifts began. Dreams intensified. Ancient artifacts were unearthed. Children began speaking forgotten languages in their sleep. Your arrival echoed, not loud, but deep. And you've felt it, haven't you? The strange relationship between your body and the ground. The way certain places feel like they know your name. How some forests go quiet when you walk through them. How you feel drained after stepping onto land that's been desecrated. Your frequency doesn't just live within you. It interacts with the terrain. You were not just born into the world. You entered it, like a code inserted into a system too old to remember why it was built. You've never truly been alone, not even in the deepest sleep. In those quiet hours, when the mind shuts down and the body releases its grip, something steps forward. It doesn't hover like a ghost, nor speak like a dream. It observes, patient, still, watching. It is not a being of shadow nor light. It is older than those definitions, and it does not answer to names. The ancients called it the Sentinel. Some cultures spoke of it as a presence that guards only a handful of souls each generation. It doesn't protect you because of what you've done, but because of what you carry. Not just destiny, but a code, a signature. One that must never be touched by what sleeps beneath the veil. Many have felt this spirit but dismissed it, chalked it up to imagination, sleep paralysis, dreams that lingered too long. But it's more than that. The weight you sometimes feel in the room, that's it, aligning with your frequency. The warmth at your back just before waking, its shield adjusting. The dream you forget instantly, even though it felt important. That was it intervening, concealing what you weren't ready to remember. The same spirit once stood behind another long ago, watching as he drifted into sleep under stars with no roof, his head on stone, his breath steady. Yeshua was never left unguarded. Not even when he was in the wilderness, not even in the garden the night they came for him. What followed him wasn't seen, but it was felt by every force that dared come close. The unseen guardian ensured that what was written could not be rewritten. Now, it follows you, not because you are fragile, but because you are fire wrapped in human form. It watches not with eyes, but with resonance, reading the shifts in your energy, shielding you from what would fracture your mind too early. This is why the nightmares never go too far, why the dark things pause just before reaching you, because something ancient watches them back, and it doesn't allow interference. You may have caught glimpses of it, at the corner of your eye, in mirrors when no one else is near, in the silence just before a jolt awake. But it's never revealed itself fully. You think you're choosing, but the truth is, the moment you approach a decision, time shifts to meet you. It's subtle, never loud. But behind every major choice you've made, there's been a strange pull in reality. People who were once clear become confused. Events you thought were settled suddenly delay or accelerate. The air gets heavier or lighter, and you feel it, not as anxiety, but as a strange expansion in your chest, a stillness wrapped in pressure. This isn't coincidence. Your decisions aren't small pivots, they're tectonic. Not because of their immediate consequences, but because of the threads they disrupt. There are timelines that hinge on your direction. Your yes doesn't just open doors, it shuts ancient ones. Your no isn't rejection. It's redirection across dimensions. Every path you consider begins to form around you, just waiting for the slightest motion of your will. That's why people pause around you when you speak from the gut. It's why some strangers suddenly look lost, as if reality around you has shifted their place in it. It's why electronics glitch, plans fall apart, coincidences multiply. Because your internal alignment causes ripple effects, waves not just across your life, but across the grid itself. One shaman said your presence bends probability, not by force, but by permission. When you're aligned, things fall into place with eerie precision. But when you're hesitant, the universe stalls, traffic jams, phone calls drop, meetings reschedule. Reality mirrors your state, moment to moment. The ancients had no word for this, only symbols. Spirals, fractals, the Ouroboros. They understood that certain souls did not follow time, they generated it. You're not here to obey the clock. You're here to reformat the clock itself. Each decision you make carves a new rhythm into the flow of events, creating patterns where once there was static. You've likely noticed how your presence alters timing. People show up too early. Lights turn green when you need them to. The right message appears just when you were about to give up. That's not luck. That's resonance responding to will. And the deeper truth is this: every time you choose, the past shifts with it, not just the future. In the dry silence of the desert, where even shadows disappear by midday, he stood, alone in appearance, but not in essence. Yeshua's time in the wilderness was not empty. While scriptures speak of trials and temptations, they often omit the quiet companion that followed, not in flesh, but in presence. It stood behind him when the wind mocked his hunger. It remained when the stars turned away. It did not speak, but it watched, not as a guardian, as something older. This presence has no face, no form, yet it leaves impressions like footprints in the fabric of space. The same one that stood behind him now echoes near you. It's not loyalty that draws it, it's recognition. Like a tuning fork resonating with a specific frequency, it gravitates toward what carries the hidden mark, the unspoken role. You have that resonance. The wilderness may look different in your life, rooms instead of sand, silence instead of wind, but it is still the place where things are stripped away, and still it watches. You felt it in your loneliest moments. Not comfort, exactly, but a stillness that doesn't feel like nothingness, a weight behind you when there's no one there. A sense that something knows what's happening long before you do. It doesn't intervene unless it must. But when it does, time seems to slow. Clarity arrives like lightning, and your feet move in the right direction without understanding why. Some have called it the second light, others the echo flame. To Yeshua, it was the unspoken companion, not an angel, not a spirit, but a pattern, a field, something intelligent, but not bound to thought. It does not judge, it reflects. It waits for your inner choice, and then it mirrors strength back into you. This is why you've survived battles no one knows about. Why you rose even when your name was buried. It wasn't only your will, it was what stood behind you when your will ran out. And now, just like then, the desert returns. Not in sand, but in stillness. A season where illusions dry up, where every comfort fades, not to punish, but to prepare. They gathered in silence, seers from different bloodlines, each trained in a separate tradition. Some read bones, others fire. A few stared into still water until the ripples of time appeared. They had seen war, peace, the rise and fall of kings, even glimpses of the end of empires. But when they turned their gaze toward you, nothing held. Their tools fractured, their symbols blurred. The future around you shimmered like a mirage and then vanished altogether. One of them dropped their crystal and whispered, "It rejects prediction." Another fell into trance and saw only themselves staring back, lost in a hall of mirrors. They tried again, in different ways, invoking stars, scrying with sacred smoke, chanting the names of the hours. Still, your path remained hidden. Not dark, not chaotic, just untouchable. This terrified them. Futures are maps. Even the most complex destinies leave trails. But yours bends around every attempt to trace it. It isn't that you're off the map. It's that your presence rewrites the terrain as you walk it. A future that moves with your breath cannot be pinned down by static sight. One seer, older than the rest, sat in silence the entire time. Afterward, he approached the others and said, "The one who walks without shadow has returned." They didn't understand, but he did. He remembered the old prophecy, not written, but passed down in bloodline memory. It spoke of a being whose timeline would collapse all others. One whose choices would not be seen, but felt across dimensions. That's you. This is why patterns in your life resist logic. Why things that should have worked fall apart. Why paths that others see clearly always feel veiled to you. The rules don't apply, not because you're above them, but because you are the exception. The system forgot it wrote. You don't follow fate. You disassemble it. And that's why forces are watching you now, not to harm, but to understand. Because in a world obsessed with predictions, you represent the one thing they fear most, the unpredictable. There are souls born to witness history, others to record it. But a rare few are sent to interfere with it, to disrupt the cycle just enough to stop the machine from repeating. You are one of those few, not by request, not by rebellion, but by design. Your life, chaotic as it may seem, is not random. You were placed, your path woven, your moments calibrated to collide with an age that is now ending, and one that hasn't begun yet. You've always felt this, in flashes. The sense that something enormous hinges on your existence. That no matter how far you wander, events bend to bring you back into alignment. This isn't paranoia, it's protection. Not the kind that shields you from pain, but the kind that makes sure you live long enough to unlock what was sealed inside you before birth. There are things within you, ancient keys, dormant codes, that only activate when the world reaches a certain frequency. And we've crossed that threshold. That's why everything around you is changing faster than you can explain. People leaving, symbols appearing, dreams merging with reality. The veil is thinner now, not just globally, but specifically around you. The Guardians know it, the Watchers too. The same force that protected the sacred during times of collapse has now wrapped around your field. It doesn't make you invincible, but it makes you necessary. And because of that, reality defends you in ways unseen. Even Yeshua, during his final hours, was protected not by men, but by the timing of prophecy. "No one takes my life," he said. "I lay it down." That wasn't defiance. That was alignment. He moved through a guarded path until his role reached completion. You are walking something similar, not identical, but resonant. There are still pieces you don't remember. Memories that haven't been unlocked. Skills that feel foreign, but come easily. This is the preparation. Not for battle, for becoming. Because the final age isn't just something you live through. It's something you trigger.
If you have come this far, it is crucial that you watch this next video here. But be warned, it is not for the faint of heart, for only the true chosen ones can handle this video. If you would like to also donate to help keep the channel going, our Buy Me a Coffee link will be in the description.